This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem. We continue in the Iggeres, HaMussar of Rabbi Salanter. So Rabbi Yisrael said that, unfortunately, there are many God-fearing people who would run away like the plague from any chash of Isser Treifa or any possibility of non-kosher. However, when it comes to other people's money, then people don't have the same feeling of disgust or wrong that they have when it comes to Yisurim of Nevela and Treifa. Says Rabbi Yisrael, the same Torah that says, Ubasar basada Treifa lo yisaychelu, the same Torah that says that one should not eat a Nevela, lo yisaycha kol Nevela, that very Torah says, lo yisasha kisrayachav, lo yisigzal, don't withhold wages from a worker, don't steal. The same Torah that says that you're not allowed to eat milk and chicken, which is actually only a d'Rabbanan, that Torah says that if you take a haircut, you should pay the guy that day because it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. So the same Torah. Now, how does a person work on that? If there are certain areas in life that people are lax in, whether it's interpersonal, whether it's monetary, how does one equate in one's consciousness, in one's psyche, the Lashon Hara or Aynoas Dvarim with Basar B'chalav? How does a person do that? So this is Rabbi Yisrael's big chiddush. Alchein, however, Im Yasim Ha'adam Libay V'navshei, if a person focuses and puts his heart and soul, Lilmoid HaHalachas HaShayachas L'Mammon B'Iyan, to learn the laws applicable to money in depth, Gemara, Upaiskim. Learning B'Iyan means to learn it from the source. You have to learn the Gemara, you learn the Paiskim, Ish L'fi Erkai, each person according to his ability. Uvefradim HaMerkaz Yiyah Al Tchunas Isser V'Heter, especially if the focus will be the nature of that which is prohibited and that which is permitted. Meaning, it sounds like if you learn the sugya for the lamdos, of Reb Baruch Ber, Reb Shimon Shkop, it will not have the same effect than if you learn what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. La'asuke hilchas al-libed shmaisa. Leida eichlu hishtamer megazal, to know how to guard oneself from stealing. Afim lo yikayim b'tchin. Now says Rabbi Yisrael, you're not going to change overnight. Let's say a person is lax in certain areas, whether it's Lashon Hara, whether it's hurting other people's feelings, whether it's monetary issues. Just because you spend 3 days learning something, you're not going to change overnight. Ki hatayva rabba b'zeh. There's a lot of desire over here. People have passion, desire, taiva. V'gam rochek hadara mehergal hamadini, and it's also very far from the habits of one's society. However, ma'rav koicha, its strength is very great, lahashrish, to ingrain and to create roots, la'at la'at, slowly slowly, kinyan rav benefesh, a very big acquisition in one's soul, ad asher yeh shava be'inav, until it's equal in one's eyes. She'elois iser v'heter, questions of prohibited and permitted, u'she'elois hashayachim lamamon, and questions that apply to money. In other words, if a person spends weeks, months, learning in depth the subject where a person is weak in, that will slowly make an impact on a person. Sometimes in life, a person says, look, this is one area I'm just going to write off. It's not my strength. I'll never overcome that temptation. And the truth is, they're right. They will never overcome that temptation with that attitude. But there is a way to work on it. Now, nobody said it's going to be a piece of cake, but it's very attainable. And that is to dedicate time on a regular basis to study that area in depth. Each person according to their ability. That is the single most effective way to change. Okay, it's actually, maybe of all the things we ever learned in this Seder, maybe the most practical. Namely, if a person needs to work on an area, then the most effective way to change in the world of Rabbi Yisrael, it's not even the Mussar, it's learning that area in depth. Ki, let's say, heaven forbid, a person violates an Avera that is unlikely, is uncommon for people to violate. So let's say somebody is promiscuous, somebody commits adultery, chas v'shon, k'mamarim zal miyutim ba'arayis. Like the sages say, it's something only very few people violate. V'takfa alav yitzra, and then they became so overtaken by the yitzra har shena'asas aloi keheter, that it becomes permitted to them. In other words, they violated it so many times that they've already rationalized away this act, that in their mind it's like it's permitted, Rahman al-San. Iker refuasai, the main medication. Now he writes in brackets, Levad hisbonus hayura v'HaMussar, aside from learning what the punishment will be, and what the severity and gravity of it is, me'agadois u'medrash Chazal, from the Agadic teachings of the Gemara and the Midrashim of Chazal, the Sifrei Mussar hashayachim lazeh, and the works of Mussar that are applicable to this, hu limud hahalachos hashayachos lazeh be'iyun, is learning those dinim that are relevant to that subject be'iyun. Uvifrad amanas lasais. Now, don't say this in a yeshiva. This is not talking about, like we said, this is not talking about learning the lamdus of the sugya. This is not talking about, the machlokes Reb Shimon Shkop and Reb Baruch Ber. This is talking about halacha, learning the sugya in depth to know what to do la halacha. Zois titain periya la'at. This will have noticeable effects slowly, lasais oiz benefesh, to empower the soul, lihishamer ma'at, to slowly guard misha'ol tachtis, from going to the abyss. L'chol apachis, at the very least, says Rabbi Yisrael, where some people, they've gotten into a habit of doing something where they'll do it just to anger Hashem, just to be spiteful, b'bechinas lahachis, ad asher tuchal teis koicha. Meaning, at first, one's learning of the subject in depth is, now at least they won't violate it just to rebel, just to get Hashem angry. Until it will reach the level, until it empowers one, by heavy involvement in the relevant halachas, liknois teva achar, to change your nature. That it won't even be a temptation to violate, gamim yichban hadavar, even if it's very difficult. So who would have thought that you could actually change your nature? Rabbi Yisrael Salanter's chidush is that, together with learning of the Mussar, but more importantly, learning that subject in depth will slowly wear away at the original nature. I'm not a psychologist, but I know there are people on this year that know better than me, but there is a concept of a certain placidity, where the mind, when a person's mind is in a habit of doing something, they actually create like brain cells which are sort of programmed to be inclined toward doing that, and cerebral placidity, something like that, where you could actually erase those brain waves and create new pathways where now you are inclined to other types of behavior. And who would have thought you could actually do this? But Rabbi Yisrael is saying you could change your nature by learning a subject in depth. Now this is a psychological technique, this is a spiritual technique, it's both of them together. And this is actually the strongest arsenal we have to really change ourselves. Okay, thanks everyone for listening, and wish everybody a great day. This week's Chumash is tomorrow night, 8:30. And until then, have yourselves a great day. Kol Tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.